everybody, welcome. I'm Marissa, I'm the Teen Services Librarian here, and I get to work with all these wonderful human beings that will be presenting tonight. I read this book as one of our favorite programs of the year, so we're so excited that you'll be here with us. And I think we have a really great selection of books: fiction, nonfiction, adult, YA, manga, graphic novel, a little bit of everything, something for everybody. So I don't want to hold us up too much more, but as a few of our tab members were going around handing out the bookmarks, that is our program for tonight. It's not in the order of the show, but it is alphabetical. Almost all of the books are here at the library, so if you're interested, you can put them on hold or check them out. A lot of them are in our ebook collection. So without further ado, Lily is up first.
Hi, my name is Lily, and the book that I chose was Alice in Borderland, written and illustrated by Hado Aso. Alice in Borderland by Hado Aso is a manga, or a Japanese graphic novel, about an 18-year-old boy named Arisu who gets transported to a mysterious world where people must compete in games in order to survive. This manga series can be compared to The Hunger Games or Squid Game. I love Alice in Borderland because it is so much more than an entertaining series where characters are fighting for survival. It is actually a philosophical work about what it means to be alive and what it means to be human. The most powerful theme in this story is that you don't need to have meaning in your life. Simply being alive is enough. The point of this series is that we should all be grateful to be alive. It shouldn't take being constantly faced with death, like the characters in this series are, for us to be grateful for what we have in our lives. At the beginning of this story, the main character, Arisu, feels that his life is not important because he hasn't contributed to society in a meaningful way. I could relate to that, as I deal with chronic pain, so it's hard for me to accomplish basic tasks sometimes, let alone for me to do schoolwork or be productive. Reading about Arisu as he changes his perspective on life and realizes that you don't have to be super successful for your life to have value, and the point of life is just living, made me change my perspective on life as well. Another theme in this work is the importance of friendship and sacrifice. While reading, you see that characters survive by helping each other and working together. Because the characters are facing life and death stakes, the moments where they put others before themselves are beautiful and impactful in a way that they wouldn't be if you were reading another story. I think the sentiment that you will not succeed by being selfish, or at the very least, your success will not have meaning if it comes at the expense of others, is a valuable lesson for a lot of young people to learn, especially if they're in a competitive environment, whether it's academic or extracurricular. Also, this series is just so well written. While the amount of prose on the page is sparse, as Alice in Borderland is a graphic novel, each bit of text reads like a poem. It is concise and beautiful. Hado Aso clearly put a lot of thought into every single word on each page. Overall, while this series is geared towards younger people, I think it is an insightful book about the beauty and fleeting nature of life that people of all ages could benefit from reading. Also, this manga was adapted as a live-action Netflix series, and I highly recommend watching it as well because the acting is phenomenal and the themes of the manga are perfectly reflected in the show. And up next, we have Lily L.
My name is Lily, and I chose the book The Elegance of the Hedgehog. This book takes place in modern-day France, and there are two narrators. The first is a little girl named Paloma, who is born into a wealthy family. And the second is Renee, who is a concierge born into a family with no love. Paloma struggles with her mental health and decides that if she doesn't find something to convince her to live in the next year, she's going to take her own life. Renee, on the other hand, struggles to both understand and process the hard life that she has led. So when Paloma and Renee get to know each other and form the bonds of family that they've never truly had before, it sets off a spark in each other. But is that enough? Both characters hide away from society and hide their intelligence and depths from the world. While these characters hide themselves, they watch the world with rapt attention. They see themselves in a little something else in each other and see each other out to form this unlikely bond. This book battles the limits and expectations that social and financial classes place upon the world. This book was originally written in French, and when it came my time to decide which language I wanted to take in high school, after reading this book, I knew without a doubt I wanted to continue taking French. And my goal by the end of high school is to be able to read it in its original language. However, if you don't know any French, I'd recommend the translation by Alison Anderson. She takes the job of translation and makes it into a form of art. Thank you. And next up we have Lena.
Hi, so I'm Lana, and today I'll be talking about V.E. Schwab's The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I was incredibly excited to start this book as I love the author, and it transcended my already high expectations. It has an incredible premise. A girl born in France in 1691 makes a deal with a god who answers after dark in an effort to escape a life of domesticity. She begs this god to grant her freedom and time to explore the world, insisting that he can have her soul when she's done with it. He grants her this wish, albeit not in the way she might have expected. Addie LaRue finds herself confined to a life where no one remembers her. They forget her as soon as she is out of their sight. A life where she cannot speak her name or tell her story. Addie's mentality is constantly plagued by her loneliness. All her relationships and interactions have a time limit of roughly a single day. She does, however, have all the time she could possibly ask for to explore her world. Her life will only end when she decides to give up her soul. This book details 300 years of solitude and silence, combined with beauty, inspiration, and amazement at what this world has to offer. But in March 2014, Addie LaRue attempts to swipe a copy of The Odyssey from a bookstore, and the disgruntled bookseller remembers her. This book shifts between the past and the present as Addie learns to live her life, test the limits of her curse, and explore not only the world, but also the people inside of it. Schwab's voice is fantastic, her writing is vibrant, and the entire book is nothing short of beautiful. Not just in the relationships that Addie learns to both cultivate and discard, but also in the way that it makes you appreciate the world. Realize that there's so much to learn, so much to explore, and never enough time to reach it all, not even if you, quite literally, have all the time in the world. I love this book from beginning to end and would highly recommend it to anyone who might be interested. Up next is Ashlyn.
Hi, I'm Ashlyn. Despite all the books that I've read this past year, the one that stands out to me the most is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The book features the famous Daisy Jones, a rising star with famous parents that have little to no time for her, leading her to find her way in the music industry. Her producer pairs her up with the band The Six. The story then follows this group, Daisy Jones and the Six, throughout their time together and their abrupt breakup. It highlights the effects of their lifestyle within the rock and roll industry and their personal conflicts as a result of this, alongside the main theme of love. One of my favorite aspects of this book is that it is written in interview format, allowing the reader to hear different perspectives. Without any spoilers, this format is also crucial to the surprise ending. It sticks out to me because I think that this is such a unique writing technique that Reid uses, which inspired me to read her other novels, such as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Malibu Rising, which I love just as much. I also love the character development and the takeaways it leaves for the reader. I encourage everyone to read this book, and it is often the first book that I recommend to others because of the beauty and inspiration that is evident on every page. This book also has just recently been adapted into a TV show, which I'm really excited to watch, and I have already heard great things about it. Although the TV show does a good job, everyone tends to emphasize the brilliance of the book, and I hope all those that read it are just as glued to the book and feel just as emotional as I did. Our next presenter couldn't be here with us tonight, but they've prepared something ahead of time. Up next is Emma, followed by Felix.
Hi there, my name is Emma Tully. I am a junior at PHS, and the book, which is actually the script for a musical, that I'm presenting is Newsies by Harvey Fernstein, music by Alan Menken, and lyrics by Jack Feldman. Newsies is a Tony Award-winning Broadway musical based on a 1992 movie by the same name, which in turn was based on the 1899 Newsboys' strike in New York City. It premiered in 2011 at the Paper Mill Playhouse, a Tony Award-winning regional theater that is actually only a 45-minute drive from here. Any theater kid worth their salt knows the plot of Newsies. But for those of you less familiar with the show, the story centers around a 17-year-old boy named Jack Kelly and his ragtag gang of ragamuffins trying to survive hawking newspapers on the streets of New York City. None of their lives are easy. They are homeless, dirt poor, orphaned children, but they are doing their best in a bad situation, selling newspapers, hanging out at Jacoby's Deli, getting coffee from kindly nuns, and flirting unsuccessfully with passing girls. That is, until the greedy owner of their newspaper, Joseph Pulitzer, yes, as in the Pulitzer Prize for Journalism, decides to raise the price of newspapers to fatten his bottom line. What ensues is a musical that played for over 1,000 performances before touring. The music for the show is incredible, even after hearing it over and over and over again at rehearsals, and the emotional journey of Jack is one that any teenager can relate to, even coming from a very different situation. Newsies is especially close to my heart because, coincidentally, it's the reason I'm not here today. Princeton High School is currently, as in right now, in dress rehearsals for our spring musical, Newsies. So, if the story at all interests you, come see our show. We open on Thursday, and tickets are available at the PHS website or on the PHS Spectacle Theater Instagram page. A DVD will be on display at the library if you'd like to check it out. Have a great night, folks.
I'm Felix. Those were all really good. Okay, I have read the Spaceboy series 3 times now, and since the creator of the series, Stephen McCraney, comes out with 2 to 3 books every year, I'm planning on reading the series again. Right after I finish Heartstopper, another great series. The book starts with a young boy in a spaceship by himself, flying through outer space. We learn that his parents have died, which is why he's all alone. But nothing else is revealed. We then cut to the main character, Amy, who lives on a deep space mining colony. We see a short snippet of a normal day for her. She has breakfast and goes to school, where she talks to her best friends, Gemma and Dylan. They learn about a space mission to something called the Artifact, which may be the first proof of aliens. But the mission was started before there was cryogenic freezing. So, the spaceship has been flying for hundreds of years, and it is the size of a city, so the great-great-grandchildren of the first people on the ship will be the ones to make contact with this artifact. We also learn she associates a flavor with everyone she knows. This is because it's important later, so store that in the back of your head. When she gets back home, she learns that while her dad was in the mines, a fuel leak started, and the company blamed it on him. So he lost his job, and they have to relocate to Earth. A trip that will take 30 years, but with cryogenic freezing means that she will be the same age, but her friends will be much older. The last thing she sees as she walks onto the spaceship is her friends waving her off. We then jump 30 years into the future. The setting is a dimly lit hallway, and a man with white hair is running down it. He looks distressed. He gets to a staircase, but trips and falls, dropping a box of paper he is holding. We then see a man with a mask walk up to the top of the stairs and kill him. Another cut, and we're back with Amy, who goes through physical therapy to learn to walk in heavy gravity. She tries to call her friend Gemma, and she picks up, and she's still young. Amy is happy to see this, until the girl says Gemma is her mom. Amy's not prepared, and hangs up before Gemma answers. After this, the book becomes more of a slice-of-life book. We see Amy go to school and meet new friends, as she adjusts to the world around her. But the sense of mystery persists, because Amy sees the boy from the spaceship at her school, and he is the first person she sees with no flavor. As time goes on, she becomes friends with a girl named Cassie and her boyfriend David. I don't want to give away the ending of the book, but what I really love about the book, and especially the series in a whole, is how it's a feel-good book. And you can relate to the characters and feel for what Amy's going through, while at the same time wanting to know what's going on with the boy from the spaceship and the man who was shot. Our next presenter couldn't be here with us tonight, but they have prepared something ahead of time. Up next is Nina F, followed by Nina E.
Hi, my name is Nina and I go to the Pennington School. I read Communion by Bell Hooks. I discovered Hooks' work shortly after her passing in 2021, and I realized that my passion for feminism is only possible because of revolutionary thinkers such as Hooks, who also wrote all about love, salvation, and feminism is for everybody. Communion fills in the gap of what feminists thought mostly lacked at the time. It explored the necessity of female love and how to navigate the search for it during and after the second wave of feminism. And Hooks established that while feminists had made leaps and bounds in the public sphere, that was not necessarily carried over into the private one. I love this book because sometimes I find it hard to remember that change must occur holistically, and my views evolved as I realized that I'd been ignorant of feminism's necessity within relationships. Hooks did an amazing job of incorporating her own personal experiences as well as critiques and analysis of other relevant works into the text, and I think she balanced the complexity of her theories with the relatability of the content really well. I would recommend this book to teenage girls and young women like myself because I think we've been socialized into morphing ourselves into palatability, and Hooks denies that we have to do that. Hooks shows the readers that we should not have to deny our authenticity for the purpose of appealing to men and larger society, and she also brings awareness to the connection between this phenomenon and how it makes women more vulnerable within their relationships and their lives in general. Overall, this book is a reminder that while visible feminist progress is important, we also have to find the strength to push back against our own internalized misogynistic ideas about love and relationships. Thank you.
Okay, hello, I'm also Nina, and I'll be talking about Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevens. This book tells the story of the winter of 1838, where George Sand and Frédéric Chopin spent in Majorca, where Chopin worked on his famous Raindrop Prelude. It's based in truth, but the most intriguing part is the narrator, which is based in fiction, a ghost who has haunted and helped Majorca for hundreds of years after she died at 14 years old. But when the ghost Blanca meets George Sand's family, she feels an understanding and sympathy that she's never felt before, for anyone dead or alive. Told through beautiful prose, the ghost Blanca lovingly watches Sand, Chopin, and Sand's children struggle with the cultural and social norms of Majorca while unfolding the tragedy and injustice of her own past. I found this book so striking because of Blanca. She's our only narrator, meaning we learn about the characters and feel this immediate love Blanca has for Sand alongside her. Blanca, inexplicably as a ghost, looks into the future, and we look as readers intimately into the past, connecting our lives to lives lived 200 years ago. I tend to gravitate towards more literary fiction and contemporary novels because I like the more immediate conflict as opposed to something monumentous. But Briefly a Delicious Life incorporates a lot of struggles about jealousy, coming of age, society and gender norms, sexuality, and ultimately what creates a delicious life. If you like reading history through a novel format, want to connect to Chopin's moving Raindrop Prelude to poignant writing about the creative process, or simply enjoy teenage ghost narrators who fall in love with authors and like to meditate on death, then I highly recommend this book.
Hi, my name is Sylvia. I'm a freshman at Princeton High School, and this is my first year in TAB. I'm here to talk to you about the book The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. The Glass Castle is a memoir of remarkable resilience and redemption. The book follows the life of Jeanette's crazy upbringing, starting with her earliest memory, from when she was a 3-year-old girl boiling hot dogs on the stove and she caught on fire. The first memory sets the scene for the whole book. Jeanette and her siblings grew up in a very poor household, where from a young age they had to be really independent. Her parents, Rex and Rosemary Walls, had very unique views on parenting. Neither one of them had a steady job. Her father claimed to be building a machine that would find gold, and her mother was an independent artist. Both jobs were inconsistent and unreliable. In her early childhood, Jeanette was constantly moving. They lived in many towns all over, which were extremely different from one another. One of the towns, Battle Mountain, was where Jeanette lived from around ages 5 to 8. Battle Mountain was a desert town where the Walls family lived in a former railroad depot. It was so close to the railroad tracks that you could wave to the engineer from the front window, Jeanette writes. Something I found really interesting about her life growing up was the close relationship she had with her siblings. Throughout the book, Lori, Brian, and Maureen, her siblings, acted not only as siblings but as good friends and advocates for each other. Their parents were often not there to support them, and they grew up relying heavily on one another just to get through the days. Jeanette felt very secluded from the outside world at many points and found it hard to interact with other children her age. No one outside of her siblings understood what she was going through and the frequent hunger and loneliness that she felt. As she grew up, Jeanette's parents kept her very sheltered, and her only view of society was through their eyes. When she joined her high school newspaper, she immediately fell in love with it. It was as if a whole new world had opened up in front of her. Whereas before, school felt as nothing more than a shelter from the difficulties at home. Journalism and writing in general helped her feel as though she belonged there. This passion made her feel in touch with the rest of the world instead of cut off from it. Next up is Kyle.
Hello, my name is Kyle, and I will be speaking about The Fire Next Time. I am unable to remember why I chose to read The Fire Next Time, but once I began to read, I was unable to stop. This important critique of racism in the United States, written by James Baldwin, is a must-read for all. He writes about his life, first explaining how he developed his relationship with religion. He then writes in regard to the Nation of Islam movement and describes his experience with Elijah Muhammad, the movement's leader. Baldwin has a conversation with him and others and describes their sentiments towards how to respond in the face of racism. Baldwin then explains his personal opinion on the relationship between the races. He personally believes that African Americans should not isolate themselves from white Americans, but he still praises the major and, in the example he gives, very successful efforts that African Americans have taken to achieve equality. Afterward, he describes his view of the power dynamic of humanity. At the end of the book, Baldwin pleads for all people of all races in America to come together and end what he calls the racial nightmare. The reason why I enjoyed reading this so much was because I was able to see the varying perspectives and responses to those who experienced the civil rights movement. It was interesting to see how those who were posed with the same question answered with different solutions. There was also a very interesting sociology aspect to the book, which I personally loved. Baldwin tells a vivid account of the social development of African Americans in the United States and explains about the effects of hierarchies on our world. By examining his view of society, we are able to obtain a deeper understanding of his rationale. These are some of the many reasons why you should read The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. Up next is Adia.
Hello, my name is Adia and I'm a junior at Princeton Day School. This is my second year on TAB. Today I'll be talking about one of my favorite books, A Gentleman in Moscow, written by Amor Towles. Our story starts in June of 1922 when Count Alexander Rostov, a man of incredible intellect and wit, finds himself the victim of a Bolshevik tribunal which deems him an unrepentant aristocrat. In a Russia rapidly turning away from its past of serfdom and absolutist rule by monarchs to communism and a supposedly classless society, any trace of disobedience must be wiped out immediately. Rostov is sentenced to indefinite house arrest in Hotel Metropole and spends decades inside the hotel, observing Russia through its most tumultuous years. Russian history is rich and complex, and this book approaches the subject matter perfectly through the lens of a stationary figure, Count Alexander Rostov, in a rapidly changing world. One thing I especially loved about this book was its use of historical footnotes and, to add more context and fun historical Easter eggs to the novel. This subject, if read in a textbook, could be boring, but Towles writes in a way that maintains the reader's attention, and I couldn't put the book down. I love that Rostov, in many ways, exemplifies of what makes us human. He is both kind and generous, but also flawed. He befriends a girl shortly after his imprisonment and adopts her daughter many years later, coming to care for both deeply. Despite being trapped in a hotel where the surroundings never change and the staff are the only constant, Rostov maintains his relationships and loves deeply. Above all, A Gentleman in Moscow is an ode to the passage of time. Imprisoned in the Hotel Metropole, Rostov sees people come and go and Russia experience both ups and downs. Though it's a wonderful historical novel, it also conveys larger themes that deeply touched me and that I think are relevant to us all. As Rostov himself observes, the truth is, no matter how much time passes, those we have loved never slip away from us entirely. Our next presenter is also in the school play and couldn't join us, but they have prepared something ahead of time. Up next is B, followed by Karina.
Hi, my name is B. I'm a sophomore in Princeton High School, and I have been a part of TAB for 2 years now. Tonight, I'm going to convince you to read Juliet Takes a Breath by Gabby Rivera. So when I first picked up this book, I figured it would be your average, coffee table read, read it in installments. novel, and instead it wrecked my social life for the duration of the time it took me to read it because I literally could not put it down. It follows Juliet Milagros Palante, a young Bronx-born Puerto Rican lesbian who has recently come out to her family and isn't sure that she'll ever hear from them again. She leaves everything behind to move to Portland, Oregon, to intern for her hero, Harlow Brisbane, the author of a feminist manifesto and essentially Juliet's Bible. She hopes Harlow and Portland will hold the answers to her life's problems. This book takes on her journey of self-discovery and learning to love herself. One of the big reasons I like this book is that nobody in it is perfect. There are no perfect villains or perfect heroes. There's just a self-proclaimed Bronx-born baby dyke trying to figure out the world and how she fits into it, and who can't relate to that? Another thing that made me completely enraptured and very, very hard to maintain conversation with while I had my nose in this was that the author's voice is so strong, so captivating, so witty, and so truthful that it made it genuinely hard to pay attention to anything else. I love it because it has lines like this. I fall asleep with that book in my arms because words protect hearts, and I've got this ache in my chest that won't go away. I've never read a book that made me think so deeply about identity, about voice, about love, about my body, about family and class and race and religion. It's brutally honest, and descriptions of the characters and settings are not only achingly funny, but also wildly vivid and will make you feel like you're right there. Bottom line, this book made me laugh till I cried, and cry till I laughed. I've never read something that made me feel so much, so deeply. I chose this book because if one person here goes home and decides to give it a go, it will make you just a little bit wiser and more than a bit happier. And isn't that what this is all about? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karina and I'm a freshman at Princeton High School. The book I'm going to discuss is called Puddin' by Julie Murphy. This starts off as a very generic high school friendship trope. There are two protagonists of the story. Millie is the popular queen bee of the school, while Callie, who is a lesser-known student. An unlikely friendship is sparked as they are forced to work at the same location. Relationships trouble arise between both friends and family as the book captures this with the ups and downs of adolescence. This book is set apart from others as it immerses readers on a detailed journey through a high school year. Two teenagers navigate their way through an all too real social world in two perspectives, one of Millie and one of Callie's. Away from interpersonal relationships, this book also discusses the importance of self-confidence. Millie has always despised her appearances, having attended 9 consecutive years of a weight loss camp. After competing and doing well at a beauty pageant, her perspective on this changes and she becomes more and more confident in herself. Her uncle's business is what mainly introduces her to Callie, which pushes them to become closer. Millie isn't especially fond of Callie, but they bond through working together and build a stronger connection through the story. The importance of building relationships and friendships is a recurring theme that I think is portrayed very realistically throughout this entire book. All in all, this is the perfect book for anyone looking for a lighthearted read that builds on alliances and amity.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I'm a senior at Princeton High School, and this is my 3rd year on TAB. The book I chose today is You Reach Sam by Justin Tao, and is written for young adults, but it deals with themes typically associated with adult novels. The depth of the novel is very intense. Yet, the story remains hopeful, tracking a senior in high school who navigates the life after the death of her long-term boyfriend. With elements of magical realism and literary fiction, the author manages to place realistic feelings in a way that's relatable to younger people. The protagonist, Julie, begins the novel dealing with her grief in an unmaintainable way. That's clear to readers. Her coping mechanisms aren't working for her, and her grief is in an unmaintainable manner. It's clear that her lifestyle is not going to last. She decides to call her boyfriend's cell phone just to hear his voicemail one more time. Instead, however, Sam picks up. Julie knows that this shouldn't be happening and knows that their connection should be gone, but it's not. She also knows that this connection won't last forever and that their phone calls left are limited. In many ways, Julie is presented as an unlikable main character, leaving readers unsure whether or not they're meant to root for her. As the book progresses, however, it's clearly presented that Julie's understanding of her grief is different from ones we often see in media. Her grief is raw, tangible, and It's easily felt by the readers, and readers can't help but empathize with Julie. Through various phone calls, the author is able to convey a beautiful series of images veiled by raw emotions that every kid feels, even if their situation is far from Julie's. The love both Julie and Sam feel for each other is clear, both romantic and platonic, and in the end the novel leaves you feeling sadness, then acceptance, and then understanding of what love is. Our next presenter was unable to join us tonight, but they've prepared something ahead of time. Up next is Sarah, followed by Shira.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and this year I read A Light Too Bright by Sam Miller. A Light Too Bright starts with the main character, Arthur Lewis Pullman III, having a climactic breakdown. He's lost his college scholarship, his girlfriend, his grip on reality, and is being sent away to live with his aunt and uncle. At their house, he finds a journal written by his grandfather, an iconic, famous author who went missing the last week of his life and died thousands of miles away from their family home mysteriously. His grandfather's decisions in that last week, plagued by his unfortunate Alzheimer's, remain a mystery to the family, and Arthur goes on a quest to find them out. He hitchhikes to a cross-country train, reliving his grandfather's last week, trying to follow in his path, and discovering what the vague clues in the journal mean. As he comes closer to uncovering the truth behind his grandfather's disappearance, his destiny becomes intertwined with a girl with just as many secrets of her own, and who is a part of the cult-like Pullman book fans. Arthur has to begin competing with the other legacy chasers despite the danger, while trying to figure himself and his heritage out. If you love coming-of-age books like The Catcher in the Rye and The Perks of Being a Wallflower, you're going to love this book by Sam Miller. I really adore this book because of the way that it deals with loss and introspection through incredible poetic writing, and while telling a fabulous, adventurous story. And here's a great quote to convince you further. "I'm nothing but a mosaic of the people I've met and the things they've carried." Thank you and happy reading!
Hello, I'm Shira. A couple of months ago, I was wandering around Barnes & Noble's when the book Burn Down, Rise Up by Vincent Torrado caught my eye. The beautiful cover drew me in, but the concept of the book is what intrigued me. Burn Down, Rise Up is a sapphic horror novel set in the Bronx. Raquel, the main character, a queer black girl, didn't really notice the disappearances occurring until her crush's cousin goes missing. Soon the main characters find out that all of the disappearances is being caused by a terrifying legend in the subway called the Echo Game. The Echo Game is a game that is different all around the world since it relies on geographical tragedies, but it still has 3 key rules. Rules that specify how you're not allowed to leave once the train begins, etc. Breaking the rules of the games also leads to serious consequences. Something I really liked about this book is how the history is really well written into the storytelling. As you read, you learn a lot about the past tragedies and the history of the Bronx, as well as how it affects the borough today. Events like the burning of the Bronx had a major impact on the place, and the storytelling really expands on that. Having a horror novel so grounded in reality in this way felt really new and interesting. The romance was also just a subplot, which makes the representation feel subtle in a way that doesn't feel forced. This book brings a new take to the horror genre, something like Stranger Things with Bronx history. Up next is Kaushik.
A Long Way Gone is a memoir by Ismail Bia regarding his experiences during the civil war in Sierra Leone. The book gives an account of the story of Bia's journey from his peaceful childhood spent playing soccer and listening to American rap music with his friends, to his recruitment as a child soldier and the horrors he witnessed and participated in during the many confrontations he engaged in. I was intrigued by Bia's vivid and raw writing that hauls the reader to the heart of the conflict and provides a unique insight into the devastating impact of war on children. Throughout the book, Bia tussles with the atrocities he committed, which he since then deeply regrets, and the atrocities he has caught sight of, and ultimately manages to escape and start healing and forgive after all the things he'd been through. This book is a very influential and poignant account of the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. It casts off light on the human cost of war and the struggles of those who have experienced it. Therefore, I believe that this book is a must-read for anyone interested in understanding the effects of conflict on individuals and civilizations. Our next presenter is also in the school play and couldn't join us, but they have prepared something ahead of time. Up next is Lydia, followed by Vivian.
Hi, I'm Lydia and I'm a senior at PHS, and today we'll be talking to you about The Shining by Stephen King. So you probably have heard of The Shining from the movie starring Jack Nicholson. However, the book is quite different than the movie and I think it's worth reading. So the story centers around a family of three, Jack, Wendy, and their 5-year-old son Danny. Jack used to be an aspiring writer, however, his alcoholism caused him many problems in his marriage, and a fit of rage he showed towards one of his students cost him his teaching job. So now he is determined to get his job back, become a better person, a better husband, and continue to follow his dream in becoming a writer. So to do this, he gets a job as a winter caretaker at the Overlook Hotel, and he believes sometimes away from everything will help him get better. His wife agrees that this is a good idea, so she decides to follow him with their son. However, the hotel has a mind of its own, and it finds Jack as its victim. It manipulates him, it brings out his worst qualities, and it transforms him into a violent monster, and he doesn't know what he's doing. The only person that senses that something is wrong is Danny, who is having a series of nightmares and visions about the past and future. So the story unravels into a series of supernatural events, creepy events, horrifying, and I think it does a great job in incorporating human qualities in the chaos of the hotel with interesting characters, with interesting backstories, that are fighting their own demons, and they just want to get together as a family again and to leave their past behind. I think every reader would find this book very interesting, and I definitely recommend it to anyone who's interested in starting the horror genre. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vivian. I'm a junior at Princeton High School, and for I Read This Book, I chose the novel Home Fire, written by Camilla Shamsi. And I recommend that everyone add this book to their reading list. The novel was named a notable book by the New York Times Book Review and won the 2018 Women's Prize for Fiction. The novel is split into 5 parts, and in each, a different character is the focus of the plot. The structure of the novel is the same as that of Antigone, an Athenian tragedy by Sophocles, outlining the difficulty of balancing family and the law. In Home Fire, the themes are the same, specifically focusing on the struggle to balance the two in Britain for Muslims in the post-9/11 period. The book highlights how these British citizens experience conflict because of their identity when they attempt to support their family and obey all laws simultaneously. The novel calls attention to the habitual nature of mistreatment that permeates the so-called advanced countries today by describing microaggressions and blatant discrimination that the characters face. As I was reading, it called attention to my own lack of daily consideration of my privilege, especially in seemingly mundane tasks. Shamsi also reflects on the difficulty of confessing, as admitting guilt is deemed embarrassing and a weak action. Today, when nearly every thought is politicized, compromising and accepting defeat are increasingly more difficult. The novel exemplifies the lengths to which people will go to maintain their original position and how they are often driven by fear. I finished reading in 2 days, but have continued to question my own biases and abilities to both concede and forgive for weeks after, which is why I would recommend this book. Thank you. And next up is Matilda.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna find my paper. In the back. I got it. Thanks. Hi, my name is Matali. I'm a senior at Princeton High School, and I've been part of TAB for the past 3 years. And tonight I'll be presenting The Overstory by Richard Powers. This novel was unlike any other I've read before. It follows the story of 9 completely different people who come from all different backgrounds, identities, and experiences. To give examples, the topics range from growing up with immigrant parents to coping with suicide in the family. Powers sets up the book such that we are individually introduced to each character in a short story type of style. We learn about what core experiences built their character and personalities and how nature plays a key role in their lives. Essentially, nature is a common thread between all of them, but Power shows how each character relies or learns from nature in different ways, how it holds different definitions for each person. But slowly the stories unravel into one and these seemingly unconnected people begin to overlap. It is an extremely satisfying read and one that will keep you hooked and satiated till the end. I hope you decide to read it.
Hi everyone, I'm Ishan. I'm a current junior at Princeton High School and this is my first year on TAB. I was kind of deliberating how I should start this off, and I ultimately came to the conclusion that, much like my author and my book, I should be completely honest, which is why I'm going to start with a little bit of a confession. Contrary to everyone I grew up around, I was really never into Greek mythology. I was never latching closely onto Percy Jackson like everyone else around me, and when the time came, Homer's Iliad was much further out of the question. But after I read Madeline Miller's The Song of Achilles, I realized that you needed background knowledge from neither of these texts, or any mythology for that matter, to find her work absolutely captivating. The story, which is told from the perspective of Achilles' lover Patroclus, follows the journey from the first time they meet up until their exploits in the Trojan War. What Miller masterfully does in this book, she weaves the tale of these figures with high intensity, and she visits and examines the familiar themes of love, glory, and the horrors of war. As Miller explained herself once in an interview, quote, "I was interested in all of the other things that Achilles could be, and the possibilities and hints that we always see in Homer." Despite using a setting so far in the past, Miller's storytelling is all but distant. By using not just familiar themes, but modernized commentary on those themes, her work holds an important place in my recent literary journey. In previous books, I had read the same gay tropes time and again. What I always read was a struggle for acceptance in the family, or the more common, homophobic jock was gay the whole time. And while these tropes are valued for some people, and some people can relate, I find Miller's writing infinitely more relatable to my own personal experiences. The book does not struggle and takes pride in being unabashedly gay. The straightforwardness with which Miller treats the men's passion and she uses to comment on male vulnerability leaves readers struggling to put the book down, including myself. What Miller's able to do is perfectly capture the fluidity of gay relationships that exist in the status quo, while still using aspects of the original text from so long ago to guide her focus. In the story specifically, the mystic proportions of Patroclus and Achilles' love gives a human aspect to both men that the original text did not have, and it specifically explores Achilles less as the traditional hero, taking him out of this role and putting him into the role of an eccentric maverick. What Miller does is masterful in her ability to reimagine and expand on the stories from long ago, which is why I think you'll love it as your next read. The next presenter needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyways. Whatever you're expecting, it's more. I'd like to present my good friend, Alex Margulies.
Thank you so much, Ishan Banerjee. I appreciate that. My name's Alexander. I read Capital, Volume 1 of Capital by Karl Marx, which is what we'll be talking about, because I hate myself. Marx once said, while philosophers have previously tried to explain the world, our task is to change it. And in order to change the world, he spent 3 decades writing a dense 500-page theoretical text about what it is to be a capitalist. It's not super accessible, it's a hefty, complicated, sometimes oblique book, but it ended up being one of the most important things I've ever read. In order to make his book fit into a 3-minute talk, I'll paraphrase, but Marx explains that what gives something value is the labor that goes into making it, which is why diamonds, which are hard to find and take time to mine, are more expensive than water, which is abundant, but everyone needs. Once they enter the market, though, those commodities become separated from the human labor that helped them come about, and, as Marx put it, become autonomous figures endowed with a life of their own, which enter into relationships both with each other and with the human race. One such relationship is what Marx dubs the CMC circuit, whereby someone sells a commodity, obtains yet another commodity, which is assumed the form of money, and then uses that money to purchase a third commodity. So you start with a commodity and you end with a commodity. In this way, workers become commodities of their own. A worker must sell their labor to get other commodities because they have nothing else to start out with. That's how workers become replaceable human machines that are paid as little as possible. In The Wealth of Nations, a book advocating for capitalism, Adam Smith's ideal world is one in which the costs are cut for buyers and employees, one where proletarianization trumps the innovation he preaches of. But there's another relation that commodities are a part of too, and that's the MCM circuit, where an individual uses money to buy a commodity, or perhaps what we now call an asset, and then sells it for a different amount of money. In this circuit, unlike the CMC circuit, money is the beginning and the end. Marx wrote that as the conscious representative of this movement, the possessor becomes a capitalist. The end goal is a horde, and this rational push towards wealth in the abstract characterizes those who actively or passively exploit laborers all across the globe today. Capital is best understood not as a book advocating for communism, but as a book exposing capitalism. And it's one that's immensely important to read for all of us who are living together in a capitalist society today. It's literally like everywhere. It's a public domain book. You can find it, and I highly recommend it. It's a dense read, but it's a really important one. This concludes I Read This Book 2023. Thank you so much to everyone who attended. You can find almost all of the books presented tonight on the table in the back, which is really fun. And as a reminder, the bookmarks, which you may have gotten, have all the books alphabetically on the back. Thank you for joining us.
So that concludes our program for this evening, but there are plenty of cookies, so please help yourselves. Take a look at some of the books, and we are going to be hanging out for a little bit, so if you have any questions for us, please feel free to ask.